The lull was deceptive. It was the kind of calm that makes you uneasy, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. We had been through storms before, but this felt different. The air was thick with tension, and the sea, though still, seemed to be holding its breath. A sinister calm, pregnant with dread. The sky was a canvas of dark, brooding clouds, and the horizon seemed to blur into an ominous shade of gray. We could sense the storm gathering strength, biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash its fury. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional distant rumble of thunder. The storm, we thought, had spent its fury. We believed we had seen the worst of it, that the worst was behind us. The sea had calmed, and for a brief moment we allowed ourselves to hope. But hope can be a dangerous thing, especially when it blinds you to the reality of the situation. We were lulled into a false sense of security, and that was our mistake. We were wrong. Like a beast rejuvenated, the Tempest roared back, fiercer, angrier. It was as if the storm had been gathering strength during the lull, preparing for a second, more devastating assault. The sky darkened further, and the wind began to howl with a ferocity that sent shivers down our spines. The sea, once calm, now churned with a malevolent energy. The wind, a mere whisper moments ago, became a deafening shriek. It tore through the rigging, snapping ropes and sending sails flapping wildly. The sound was almost otherworldly, a banshee's wail that seemed to come from the very depths of the ocean. It was a sound that spoke of chaos and destruction, a harbinger of the storm's renewed fury. It whipped the sea into a frenzy, waves swelling larger than any we'd seen. The water, once a placid expanse, now rose and fell with terrifying force. Each wave seemed to grow larger, more menacing, as if the sea itself was rising up to swallow us whole. The ship was tossed about like a toy, and we could do nothing but hold on and pray. Fear, raw and primal, gripped our hearts. It was a fear that went beyond the rational, a fear that spoke to something deep within us. We were at the mercy of the elements, and there was nothing we could do to change that. The storm was a force of nature, indifferent to our plight, and we were powerless in the face of its wrath. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. The first wave was merely a prelude, a taste of what was to come. The sky grew darker still, and the wind howled with renewed vigor. The sea, whipped into a frenzy, seemed to come alive, each wave a living, breathing entity bent on our destruction. We braced ourselves for the onslaught, knowing that the worst was yet to come. The first wave hit us like a battering ram. It crashed over the deck, sending a wall of water cascading down upon us. The force of it was staggering, knocking us off our feet and sending us sprawling. The ship groaned under the impact, and for a moment, it felt as if we might be torn apart. The ship groaned, a tortured beast under the onslaught. Every timber creaked, every joint strained, as the vessel fought to stay afloat. The sound was a symphony of agony, a testament to the ship's struggle against the relentless power of the storm. We could feel the ship shudder with each wave, and we knew that it was only a matter of time before something gave way. We were thrown off our feet, crashing against bulkheads, clinging desperately to anything that offered a semblance of hold. The deck was a chaotic mess of water and debris, and it was all we could do to keep from being swept overboard. Every wave brought a new challenge, a new test of our endurance and resolve. Salt water stung our eyes, the wind snatched the breath from our lungs. The elements were relentless, battering us from all sides. The salt water burned like fire, and the wind was a constant howling presence that seemed determined to drive us to the brink of madness. We were exhausted, battered, and bruised, but we knew that we had to keep fighting. We were no longer battling a storm. We were fighting for our lives. The storm had become a living, breathing entity, a malevolent force that seemed intent on our destruction. We were pushed to our limits, both physically and mentally, and it was only our sheer will to survive that kept us going. The storm raged on, and we knew that we had to endure, no matter the cost. Chaos reigned. Orders were shouted, swallowed by the wind. The storm was relentless, a monstrous force that seemed to have a will of its own. The deck was a battlefield, each sailor a warrior fighting not just the elements, but the creeping dread that threatened to paralyze them. The wind howled like a banshee, its icy fingers clawing at our faces, making it nearly impossible to see or hear anything clearly. Each man fought the storm and the rising panic within. Faces, etched with determination and fear, were set against the backdrop of the raging tempest. The storm tested not just our physical strength, but our very will to survive. Every gust of wind, every crashing wave was a challenge, a question of whether we had the resolve to keep going. The camaraderie among us was our lifeline, each man drawing strength from the other, knowing that unity was our only hope. The ship, our only sanctuary, was being tossed about like a child's toy. It groaned and creaked under the strain, a fragile vessel in the grip of nature's fury. The waves were merciless, lifting the ship high into the air before plunging it down into the abyss. It was a roller coaster of terror, each drop a reminder of our vulnerability. The ship's timbers strained and groaned, a symphony of stress that echoed our own internal struggles. Sails, ripped to shreds, flayed against the Tempest's fury. They were once our wings, now they were tattered remnants, flapping uselessly in the wind. The storm had taken its toll, leaving us crippled and exposed. The sight of the torn sails was a stark reminder of our predicament, a visual representation of the storm's power. Each rip and tear was a testament to the ferocity of the elements we were up against. The roar of the wind, the crashing of waves, the creaking of the ship, a terrifying symphony of chaos. It was a cacophony that filled our ears, drowning out all other sounds. The storm was a living entity, a beast that roared and raged, determined to break us. The ship's creaks and groans were its cries of pain, a desperate plea for mercy that went unanswered. We were at the mercy of the storm, and it showed no signs of relenting. Waves, towering behemoths of water, bore down upon us. They were mountains of liquid fury, each one a potential death sentence. The sight of them was enough to strike fear into the heart of even the bravest sailor. They loomed over us, casting long shadows that seemed to swallow the ship whole. Each wave was a challenge, a test of our resolve and our ability to endure, each one a threat to our fragile existence. The waves were relentless, each one more powerful than the last. They crashed against the ship with a force that shook us to our core. It was a battle of attrition, a test of endurance that seemed never-ending. The ship was our only refuge, but it felt increasingly inadequate against the onslaught. We clung to it, our lifeline in a sea of chaos. We were insignificant against the raw power of the ocean. Fear lent us strength. It was a primal fear, a survival instinct that pushed us beyond our limits. The ocean was a vast, uncaring entity, and we were mere specks in its expanse. But in that insignificance, we found a strange kind of strength. The will to survive, to fight against the odds, became our driving force. Each man drew on reserves of strength he didn't know he had, fueled by the desire to see another dawn. Every man pushed his limits, knowing that to relent was to perish. It was a test of endurance, a battle of wills against the storm. The deck was a hive of activity, each sailor performing his duty with a grim determination. There was no room for error, no time for hesitation. Every action was a calculated move in the dance of survival. The storm was a relentless adversary, but we were determined to match its fury with our own resolve. In the face of overwhelming odds, we found our strength, our unity, and our will to survive. Steering became a monstrous task. The waves, no longer content to merely toss us around, crashed over the deck, transforming the ship into a submerged death trap. The air, thick with spray and fear, was difficult to breathe. We choked on it, tasted the salt on our lips, felt the sting in our eyes. Each breath was a victory. Through the maelstrom, Captain Jackson barked orders. His voice, though strained, held a thread of steel. His eyes, reflecting the storm's fury, never wavered. He was our anchor, our beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming despair. If you enjoyed this journey, like, subscribe, and share our lens of life unframed for more content and support. "Cut the mainmast!" the captain roared, his voice barely audible above the Tempest's scream. It was a desperate gamble, a last resort. We moved with the urgency of the condemned. Each swing of the axe, a prayer whispered to the wind. With a groan that echoed the storm's fury, the mast crashed into the raging sea. The ship shuddered, momentarily freed from the sail's relentless pull. The gamble had paid off. For now. We were at the mercy of the storm, adrift in a world of raging water and howling wind. But we were alive. For now. Time lost all meaning. The storm had swallowed the sun, and the moon was but a distant memory. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the occasional flash of lightning that illuminated the chaos around us. Hours bled into each other, marked only by the relentless assault of the storm. The rain was unyielding, a constant barrage that seemed to mock our efforts to stay afloat. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at our sails and threatening to rip our ship apart. Exhaustion gnawed at us, our bodies battered, our spirits frayed. Each wave that crashed over the deck felt like a hammer blow, sapping our strength and our will. Our hands were raw from gripping the ropes, our muscles screamed in protest, but we could not afford to rest. Yet we clung to life, fueled by a primal instinct to survive. The storm was a beast, and we were its prey, but we refused to be consumed. We fought back with every ounce of strength we had, driven by a fierce determination to see the dawn. Every man pushed past his limits, drawing strength from the man beside him. In those moments of shared struggle, we found a bond that transcended words. We were brothers in arms, united by a common goal: to survive the night and live to tell the tale. We were no longer individuals. The storm had stripped away our differences, leaving only the raw essence of our humanity. We moved as one, our actions synchronized by an unspoken understanding. Each man knew his role, and we performed our duties with a precision born of necessity. We were a single entity, united in our fight against the storm's wrath. The fury of the Tempest was a formidable foe, but our unity was our greatest weapon. Together, we faced the storm's onslaught, our spirits intertwined in a dance of survival. We had stared death in the face, felt its icy breath on our necks. The fear was palpable, a constant companion that gnawed at the edges of our resolve. But in that fear we found a clarity of purpose. We knew that to falter was to perish, and so we pressed on, driven by a fierce will to live. And in that crucible of fear and desperation, we found a strength we never knew we possessed. The storm tested us, pushed us to our breaking point, but it also revealed the depths of our resilience. As the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, we knew we had survived not just the storm, but a trial of the human spirit. We emerged from the darkness, battered but unbroken, forever changed by the ordeal we had endured together. Then, as if even the storm grew weary of its own fury, the wind began to ease. The waves, though still monstrous, lost some of their ferocity. The sky, a bruised canvas of gray, offered a glimmer of light. Hope, fragile but tenacious, blossomed in our hearts. We had faced the tempest's fury and emerged, battered but unbroken. We had stared into the abyss and found the will to claw our way back. As the storm finally began to recede, leaving behind a trail of destruction and the echo of its rage, we knew that we were forever changed.